What happens when you finally discover why you've struggled your whole life, and instead of relief, you feel worse? Today, we are following the story of Lilli, a story that belongs to thousands of women. We're going to walk through the diagnosis spiral, from the first spark of recognition on social media, through the gaslighting of dismissive doctors, to the graveyard of unused planners. This isn't a success story about a magic pill. This is the raw reality of unmasking a lifetime of defenses. Let's descend into the spiral.
So, what happens when you get decades into your life and you suddenly realize your brain might have been playing by a completely different set of rules the whole time? Today, we're going to dive into that whole messy, confusing, and super emotional journey of getting a late ADHD diagnosis. We'll do it by following one woman's story as she spirals her way toward an answer. For this woman, Lilli, it all kicked off in the most normal way possible, just scrolling on Instagram. And then this video pops up. It's a woman, just being really genuine, with tears in her eyes, talking about her own struggles, her feelings of failure, and then she gives it a name, ADHD. For Lilli, it was like, bam! It felt like she was looking right into a mirror. You know how it goes. That one single video was the spark, and then the algorithm, our modern god of strange coincidences, it took notice. And it started to open this door that Lilli never ever knew existed, sending her right down a rabbit hole of discovery that was, honestly, both terrifying and felt right.
Yeah, it started with a few reels, but pretty soon it was so much more. We're talking hour-long YouTube confessions, deep dive podcasts, and just stories from other women, and they were describing her life, like to a T. The mountains of laundry, constantly forgetting names, that feeling of never being able to just sit still. Every story was another piece of a puzzle she didn't even know she was trying to solve.
And with every new piece of information, the questions in her head just got louder and louder. Okay, this wasn't just her failing. This was a shared experience. And that led to these two really crucial questions that changed everything. First, why is this some kind of secret? And second, and this is the big one, what am I supposed to do now?
So Lilli shifted gears. She went from just passively discovering things to actively searching. I mean, she's an adult, she's a rational person, and she decided, okay, I'm going to get some professional answers. But this next part of the journey, it wasn't about finding a solution. It was really just about hitting one wall after another.
Her journey basically became this gauntlet of dead ends. She tried everything the world tells you is supposed to work, but every single attempt just left her feeling more lost and more misunderstood than before.
First stop, the specialists. But what she got was skepticism. One doctor straight up told her ADHD is a childhood disease. Another just waved it off as a fad. Can you imagine? She left those appointments feeling like a total hypochondriac, wondering if she really was just making it all up to excuse her own problems.
Well, she eventually found someone who gave her a prescription, and she held that pill like it was the key to everything. This was the thing that would finally fix her. But the reality? It was jarring. Her heart was racing, she felt chemically weird, totally unnatural. She was focused, sure, but it wasn't her. It felt like she was a robotic version of herself. So, next, she tried cognitive behavioral therapy, the supposed gold standard. But the therapist's advice about just changing your thought patterns just didn't connect. This quote really captures it perfectly. It felt like they were logically explaining how to fly by flapping your arms. The advice makes perfect sense on paper, right? But for her brain's specific wiring, it was completely useless. Then came all the life hacks. You've heard them. Eat that frog, do the hardest task first. Well, Lilli couldn't even find the frog in all the morning chaos. Reward systems? Total fail, because her brain demanded that dopamine hit right now, not after the work was done. And the planners? Oh, the planners. They just became these beautiful, expensive, empty monuments to her failure. Desperate for someone to understand, she turned to her family. She even saw so many of her own traits in her own mother. But that conversation, it was like a bucket of ice water. Please don't make things up, her mom said. It just completely trivialized a lifetime of struggle and left Lilli feeling more alone than ever. Okay, so this is where the journey really turns inward. It goes into the super complex, contradictory, psychological landscape of living with an undiagnosed neurotype. And it's a world of paradoxes that can feel absolutely impossible to escape.
She fell into this really cruel mental trap. Sometimes people call it double imposter syndrome. So when she failed at something, her brain would see, I'm just incompetent, I'm making excuses. But then, when she succeeded, the script would flip to, see, you were just faking it all along.
As you can see, it is a perfect no-win loop of just constantly invalidating yourself. And then she found a name for something she had felt her entire life: rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. It explained everything: why simple criticism felt like a physical wound, why even a perceived slight could send her spiraling for days. Her brain wasn't just being dramatic, it was literally processing rejection as real, physical pain.
So in this fit of desperation, Lilli actually got her hands on the diagnostic manual, the DSM-5, and as she's reading these dry, clinical criteria for inattention and hyperactivity, it was like reading her own biography. Forgetting daily activities, losing things, feeling restless, interrupting others, it was a literal checklist of her entire life. Now this next stage is arguably the most profound and the most painful part of the whole journey. Because now that she had this new language for experience, Lilli started to realize that so much of what she thought was her personality was actually something else entirely. She started learning about coping mechanisms, and not as conscious choices, but as these subconscious defenses that she'd built up over years and years, just to survive in a world that wasn't designed for her brain. She started peeling back the layers of her own identity, and what she found underneath was just shocking.
And this really illustrates that discovery perfectly. Her perfectionism? It was a desperate defense to keep from making careless mistakes. Her quick humor? That was a shield to protect her from social awkwardness. Her intense diligence at her job? Just a mask for a deep, deep fear of failure. Even her empathy, she realized, was a kind of hypervigilance, a way to read the room constantly to avoid rejection. So all of this, the searching, the failures, the unmasking, it led her down and down into these tighter and tighter circles. She wasn't really moving forward, she was spiraling inward until she finally reached the bottom, the very center of it all. And right there, at the center of that spiral, was this one devastating question. If so much of her personality was just a series of walls she'd built to contain the chaos, what was left? Who was the real person underneath all of it? Was there even anyone there at all?
And this is the final, cruel paradox of the whole thing. She'd done it. She had the name for it. She had the research. She had found a community of people who actually understood. She had all the answers she'd been desperately searching for. And yet, she felt worse than when she started. Because now she knew for sure that she was different, but she still had no idea how to actually live.
And that's where this leaves us. A diagnosis, it isn't the finish line, it's not the cure, it's not the final answer that makes everything suddenly better. It is simply the map. A map to a foreign country that you've been living in your whole life without even realizing it. And now, finally, you have to learn how to read it.
Lilli's story is heavy, but it is real. We learned today that a diagnosis doesn't instantly fix everything. In fact, stripping away your defenses can leave you feeling exposed and identityless. But remember, hitting the bottom of the spiral gives you a solid place to push off from. This video was a summary of the spiral chapter from A Red Hood. If you are ready to take that map and start learning the language of your own brain, please check out the book or the free overview in the description below. You aren't broken, you're just learning a new operating system. Thanks for watching.